Welcome, John. We are glad that this is actually a distance and remote thing because you started coughing already.
Yeah, we're pre-configured for remote work as well.
Yeah. Well, I've been quite lucky. I haven't really been affected too much about the virus because, I've been working remote for forever. Since around about, I guess, 2010. Mostly, I think I had a year and a bit where I was, just over a year when I was working in a bank where I couldn't do remote. But like 1 year out of the last 1 year out of the last 10, I've been remote.
Okay.
Although that did include a lot of traveling, so which
you were literally remote at that point.
Literally very, very remote. Yeah. Like traveling all over the world.
Every time somebody wants you somewhere, you just escape from there and go to some other place to be remote.
Yes, hopefully, ideally, yes. Although
the Clojure Pimpernel.
If you're not careful, you end up being on call 24 hours a day because like you just move. If you go the wrong way around the world, then you're always like available. If you go the other way, then it's a lot easier.
Yeah. So how's the situation you're in UK now, right? On which place?
I'm still in the UK. I'm still in London, which is a hotbed for the cases in coronavirus cases that have been reported. So we're doing quite well. We're keeping up with America, so we're doing an impressive amount of keeping up with cases and going out and ignoring social distancing. Although in the last few weeks, people have finally actually realized it's a worldwide pandemic and actually starting to take it a bit more seriously now.
I thought it was the other way around because I'm thinking when it started, people were a bit serious, but later I think this slowly getting complacent or annoyed, and then things became much, much worse.
Well, when the sun came out.
Oh yeah, that's the problem for most of you people,
and as you can see on the webcam, I've been out in the garden. I certainly haven't been on for very long distance rides or anything, but I've been out in the garden. But yeah, as soon as the sun comes out, then people start talking about wanting to go and lift the curfew, lift the lockdown. As if it's some kind of punishment rather than actually protecting your life. But I've been doing quite a bit of help for neighbors and going around to neighbors, helping them, donating my excess supply of cat food to neighbors that couldn't find them as well. I still think we have the massive toilet paper shortage.
Wow.
There's I
guess you've got cats though, so you can always use them.
I use the cat litter.
You use the litter box.
The actual cats, no?
No. Well, they do lick themselves clean, but
exactly, it will all work out, So they will cut down the cat food as well,
Yeah, I don't think. I'd have to catch them first, and I think once I did it, then I'd never see them again. But I guess I was already quite prepared because I'd already stocked up for Brexit anyway. So, it's that did kind of help me. Yeah, I've been prepping for the end of the world already. So before the end of the world actually happened. So
there's two end of the worlds for you, isn't it? Really. One end of the world is being slightly put off now by this coronavirus, but it's still coming. They've got to make the decision in June, I think.
Well, they'll both come back by the end of the year, so so it's just which comes back first to kill off more people. So it is. I think people are being more sensible now, and
haven't they started to Brexit already though? With this, they didn't join the ordering for with the EU.
Oh yeah.
The PPE stuff.
It's being completely incompetent. I mean, we've kind of unnecessarily put people in danger by not getting resources that we could have got just because they're from the EU, and we'd rather import things from Turkey, which is ironic because that's exactly the last thing they wanted to do when they wanted to do Brexit. So
I know.
What's going on there?
Well, no, it wasn't meant to make sense, John. I mean,
No. I mean, they made a huge big thing about a plane, and then people started out, and they claimed there was this amount of stuff in the plane. But then people looked at the pictures of the plane, and actually that plane can only carry half the amount that they were claiming that actually came into the country. And it's only enough for a day. It's like a day's worth of supplies.
Wow.
It was like, what is the point of that? But there we go. Yeah. So
I guess 10 years
still
of,
love. Yeah. People still love the idiots in charge. So there you go.
It's weird though, isn't it? I mean, yes. 10 years of consistent cutting of the health services. And the
but
social
you're
care.
John, you're like a super cyclist, right? So how are you keeping up with the cycling and your health?
Well, I wasn't. Because you see the top part of me. If I tilt the camera down, then you can see I'm a bit rounder than I used to be last year. Yeah, I mean, last year it was great because I did a ride across Britain. So I literally rode from Land's End to jr0cket in 9 days, which is...
How long is that? I mean, how many kilometers?
It's like 100 miles every day, which is about 175 kilometers.
In proper terms, like kilometers.
Yeah.
What the fuck is miles?
There's like 175 kilometers we were doing on average a day because it was just over 100 miles every day. It's like 109 miles every day and 175 kilometers.
Okay, but UK is not like Netherlands, right? We have like plenty of gradient and everything. In Netherlands, you just sit in one end and then just pedal for a couple of times and you're in Belgium, you know?
Yeah, I did live in Amsterdam for 3 years and I enjoyed the flatness of the country. And then you have to go to Maastricht and then you find a hill.
Yes, there is one hill. Yes.
So it was quite a revelation when you go on the train from Amsterdam into Germany and you see, whoa, look at all these castles on these big hills. It was really nice. I just stuck my head out of the train for like 3 hours and enjoyed, whoa, hills. I used to have these. It's great.
Yeah. But aren't you using something like, I saw a couple of people who are into cycling. They have like this digital thingy that you can just bike with other people virtually, remotely or something.
Yeah, there's like I guess it's like these massive online video games, but for cycling. And there's a lot of hype around those as well. They've been around for a while, but obviously now there's a big thing. I have a little what you call a trainer for the bike, and it's just like a little stand you put your bike in, so it just lifts the back wheel off the ground, and you just sit there and just pedal. And I don't really do the games, but I'll watch. I got Disney, so I'll just watch the Star Wars movies.
I do exactly the same thing, John, actually. I've got it in the garage for the laptops. I tend to watch Rich Hickey talks because I'm a suck ass, you know.
Well, that's an idea, actually. Yeah, I've kind of watched. I think I've watched all the Mandalorian, or the first 7 episodes of that already, which I really enjoy. And I've still got a couple of movies I haven't watched, and they've still got the very latest movie to come out, the 9th Star Wars movie.
Yeah, the last, I don't know, the Rise of Skywalker or something.
Yeah. So that's not.
Have we started yet? By the way,
it's recorded.
Yeah, I know, but
yeah, it is.
Okay,
yeah.
We haven't said welcome to Defen, and this is John, by the way.
Oh yeah, hello, welcome to Defen. This is episode number 59, and we are talking with John Stevenson. So I think we should get started with, we already got started, so fuck it. So I think we should just say the most important question to close the podcast. Emacs or some other shit, John, so we can shit on Ray now.
Emacs is my life. It's I am afraid
that's why you were invited onto the show. Now I understand.
Well, I should clarify that. I mean, I wasn't entirely convinced with Emacs at first. And it did take me a while. I think I picked it up at university, but then I think it was when I started learning Clojure, I decided to learn Emacs at the same time. And I didn't really get too far with it. I mean, it was really useful. I liked it. It's nice, lightweight, did a lot of useful things, but I didn't really fall in love with it until, to be honest, until I started using Spacemacs. And that converted me over to the other dark side of Vim. And so now I'm happily using Vim and Emacs together in the happy land of Spacemacs.
Yeah, and I think I really like the distribution Spacemacs. I mean, I'm trying with different things like Doom and a couple of other things, but I've been using Spacemacs forever since the beginning. And I don't know, I think the shortcuts and everything, muscle memory, and then fuck it, I'm going to switch to this one. So it's a bit wonky with all the develop branch constantly, and then... Otherwise, it's super awesome though.
Do you spend 2 or 3 hours a day configuring Emacs, John?
Well, this is it. Because I use Spacemacs, I do not have to at all.
Exactly.
Okay.
You basically, in fact, I've actually set it up so that I if I'm going to install it from scratch, I install the usual Java and Clojure stuff for Clojure development. Install Emacs, and then I've just got
Trinity.
and then I've just got two Git commits, and then I've got everything set up exactly how I want it to. One commit, one Git clone is the Spacemacs repository, and then I've just got my own configuration, which is based on the Spacemacs configuration with a few extra things. And it just works, and it's got it all set up for broadcasts, so it's all nicely. It's a nice white background, so it's easy to read. It's got a nice big font, so it's easy to read on small devices when you're broadcasting as well. And it's got all the extra bits I put into Spacemacs. Although most of those are actually, I've just done those as pull requests into the project. So it's nice to be able to be a contributor to that project that I'm using every day as well. Mm-hmm. And it's also, I keep getting more and more into org mode as well. So I just finally...
I mean, org mode is fucking amazing. Yeah. It's just mental.
I see you've got a whiteboard with all kinds of things on the background there. Is that a kind of like 2D version of org mode, is it?
Yeah, I've got a whiteboard, and then the walls have got paint on as well. So I've just cleaned the wall. Well, I cleaned those walls, but I've got these walls as well, which has got all right.
So you can write there.
Yeah.
Nice. You've got fancy paint. Okay.
Yeah, I paint it all on. I got that ages ago. And
what kind of paint is that, by the way? The one that you can write on. Is it just a standard gloss?
No, I think I just Googled for it, and you can get special paint that's just basically you paint it on the wall, and it turns the wall into a whiteboard.
Right,
nice.
Okay.
But I think you can also get plastic covering as well.
Yeah, I got that one.
You just stick it on, which is probably better. It's easier, I think, than painting.
We had this standard, typical, IKEA, what you call like a poster thingy in every home. So we had that one. I just covered it with this whiteboard making foil, whatever that is called.
Okay.
So I turned one of the quote unquote paintings with the photos with the thing. That works pretty well actually. So maybe slightly less effort than painting the whole thing.
Yeah, it did take me a while, and I guess with painting also, if you do it after you've set your desk up, then you have to move all your desk out the way. So.
Yeah, you can't move the desk around into a different room, and then you lose your whiteboard.
Well, that's true. I was thinking of moving my desk into another room, but I just haven't got around to it. So that's why my whiteboard is here. So like everything's set up to this little tiny room, which is fine during the winter because it's nice and cool, but it does get a little bit warmer in the summer. So but I guess it encouraged me to actually get some work done before like 4 o'clock in the afternoon when it starts to get warm, and then I could just watch Star Wars for the rest of the day.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to Spacemacs things, I think it became really like a nice distribution. I think the first thing I only have one contribution, which is basically starting the Clojure layer, and then I just disappeared, and then I keep using it. So that's my one contribution there. Well, two actually, because I also fixed some Latin word somewhere in the thing.
Right.
So I have like 2 contributions in Spacemacs, and that means I'm done. I peaked my
you
my
corrected the spelling
there.
of Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, something like that. No, it's about something like the Lord something like a Trinity or whatever.
Okay.
And then I fixed that one, and then I love the way that I got a special mention in the contributor thing saying, I don't know, Latin language, whatever.
Nice.
Think guy or something.
Yeah. I think I've done about 30. Yeah, I've got about 30 pull requests that are being accepted in there as well. So they're all kind of in the changelog as well.
Yeah,
and a lot of them are kind of fairly simple key bindings, like user experience stuff. But there's a few things in there. I've still got to. I guess the benefit and the limitation of Spacemacs is you don't really end up writing that much eLisp, so I haven't really learned that much. And but it does allow me to do it. It's a classic definition of standing on the shoulder of giants. You get to do so much more than you would do otherwise.
Well, I noticed that this is becoming like a bit of a sort of PR waving contest now.
Yeah. Well, I haven't really started. I haven't started talking about my book yet. So, which which I'll send you a free copy of, obviously. So it's along with everybody else because it's on the web.
We'll put a link in the show notes then.
Excellent stuff.
But most of the people, they do say that learning Emacs for beginners is pretty difficult. But you've been doing all these beginner podcasts with beginner screencasts and book with Spacemacs. So how is it working when you're teaching other people all this stuff?
I think it's really interesting because I guess I used to do consultancy many years ago, like when I first came out of university back in '97, giving my age away there, and I was doing consultancy there, and I really liked kind of helping people understand things, and because I kind of learned so much from doing that. I don't always feel like I'm learning a huge amount of stuff, or I feel like I've got a lot of gaps when I'm just sitting down coding. But when I'm actually encouraged or even forced to go and explain things to people, then I tend to pick up a lot more things, or at least I know where the gaps are. And it really does help. I think it's really helped grow my own understanding, certainly over the last few years. And so I do a lot of writing down, trying to explain how to use things simply, because I forget things. I think, well, how do I know I did that, and I get really annoyed when I've done something and I just can't remember how to do it. I can't be bothered to think about how I did it again. I just want to know how I did it last time. So that's why I started doing blogging, just to write down all the things I've kind of done, and then that turned into books, and then I started doing presentations and conference talks. So you end up writing stuff down there as well. And that all merged into doing, I kind of got a bit bored of doing talks. So I ended up doing workshops. And I think I found that fewer people submitted workshops. So they're actually easier to get into conferences if you actually submit a workshop rather than the talk. And I found them more fun as well, because you can do all the work up front in a workshop, and then when you actually give the workshop, you kind of point them at a web page and kind of walk through a few things, and it's a lot easier actually on the day. But when I used to do something called Hack the Tower, which is a Saturday day, and it was kind of like an all-day hack day, like a really long dojo kind of thing, and we just spend the day learning how to do Clojure. And it was great fun. There was I used to get people from like the London Java community and the Scala community and the Clojure community to come along, and we'd all break up into groups and go off and do our little projects. And I was doing a little kind of Clojure workshop during the day, and making most of it up as we were going along, unless I could find usually I found a really good tutorial on the way in to actually run the event. Or the night before, and then we'd kind of walk through the tutorial and trying to figure out how it works, and I'd try and explain how it all worked to everybody else. And it was a great learning experience. I learned so much more about Clojure by doing those things than anything else I was trying.
So how did you see the people receiving it? Because you've been teaching for, I don't know, how long now?
Oh, God. Well, I started running the Scala dojo back in 2009. Because
that we shall not speak about.
Well, Scala was my gateway drug into Clojure. Because, well, I suppose that's not entirely true. Just a brief step back. My gateway drug into functional programming was Haskell.
Maybe you should start from the beginning, like how did you end
come
up
on,
in Clojure? Maybe that would be a nice.
Yeah, I could do that.
Take us to
We've got time. We've got time. Everyone's at home. It's okay.
This is going to be the longest podcast ever, isn't it?
Of course.
I'm just going to text my wife to get me another beer. Hang on.
We'll just start streaming.
Excellent.
It will never end.
Yeah.
It's like a public address system. It just keeps on going.
I could
Clojure propaganda.
I could once I get going, I could talk forever. Yeah, I guess the peak of interest into functional programming, I guess, was the catalyst for getting me into Clojure, and that all started with I think mostly with Haskell at university, and I think it was because it took me 3 months to actually figure out like 10 lines of code in Haskell and actually understand what they meant, and actually be able to write my own bit of Haskell. But then because it was a university course, like you do 3 months and then you move on to the next subject.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt like that kind of got buried in the back of my brain somewhere. And I think we did actually do a little bit of Lisp, but it was taught so badly that I didn't really, I'd kind of forgotten it. I think I'd blocked it out of my mind. And then I ended up doing Java for a living because it was, at that time,
because you were a normal human being, basically.
It was
everyone was doing.
It was the coolest thing to do. Everybody wanted to do Java, and this was this would have been in '97. And I was excited to do it because it was so much easier than using C++ and C, because you had this huge, great big API to use, and it just did stuff for you.
It had the internet built in, which was amazing.
Yes, it did. Yes, and then we put XML on top of it, and kind of like scared everybody.
We put XML everywhere.
Yes, but but you talked about that last time as well. So
I don't think there's any XML in Java, though, is there? I mean, apart from like the API, I don't think you have to do any XML in Java.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was just around like the early 2000s where it was just everywhere, and people were getting obsessed with it. I remember, was it EB XML, which is like Enterprise XML. And that was from Sun, so it was the same team.
There was a Fix ML, wasn't there? Because I think you were in banking at that time, maybe, or around at that time. Because Fix ML was the big language for financial services.
Okay, I seem to vaguely remember. I didn't really do much financial stuff until recently, actually. But but yeah, it was like I was well aware of all the stuff, like the big enterprise stuff that they were doing, and I actually did like EJBs at one point for my sins.
Yeah, guilty also. Yeah.
But then I kind of I matured.
The session beans, John, they weren't too bad.
Yeah, I think session beans were okay.
They were often the least used ones, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The stateful session beans with container managed persistence.
Oh yes.
Take you back there.
CMP beans.
They were guaranteed job for life doing that because nobody could figure out this.
Why are you only getting 3 transactions a second?
Yeah. Okay. We got 3 transactions a second. Woo! So I think I lived in the world of Java until about 2010. So it was quite a while, and I think I just got completely bored of Java, or I felt there was something missing because you're just doing the same things over and over again. And I guess everybody kind of gets this who's got a long career in this. If you're doing the same things, even if you do different things in the same language, it's more interesting. But you tend to end up doing the same things in the same language, and it just gets, you want something to refresh your own motivation.
Do you remember? I don't know if you were. It was probably around that time where there was a bunch of Lambda proposals for Java. And there was one big kerfuffle where lambdas were proposed by some 3 or 4 like luminaries of the Java world, but it was killed. And then eventually it came back, but a different proposition came back. But that's for me, that was the first time I'd kind of thought, this programming language is lacking something. Oh yeah, that's what it is. It's lacking these lambdas.
Yeah, I think around I can't remember when Java 7 came out, but I remember a lot of discussion around then about all the things that people would like to put into Java, and I think that's around about when people started thinking about other languages on the JVM and not just seeing the JVM, the Java Virtual Machine, as a vehicle for just the Java language, and people experimenting with things like JRuby and other languages, and it was interesting because I think it was just happened sometime after that, and then Microsoft came out with their .NET platform, which supported all their different languages, and I think it opened people's eyes out to, and I think it made the industry a huge boost for the industry, actually, because I used to live in a world where it was, you either did Microsoft or you did Java, and that was the end of this discussion, and it was kind of boring. And now you've got every few months. Oh, we should use this language. Oh, we should use this language. We should use this language. And it's. I mean, I appreciate it's very confusing for people who are starting developing now, but it's actually. It gets developers to think and engineers to think about, well, what's the right kind of thing to use for the thing that we were actually building. And you don't always get that decision right because you don't always know everything, but you've got the opportunity to actually build the right thing in the right language.
Don't you think the fact that you've got choices is also in itself a kind of educational process, in the sense that in the past, with Java and Microsoft or whatever, or Java and C#, they were the only games in town for like serious programmers. That you didn't know what the trade-offs were. It was just it was kind of a religious war almost.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't a kind of. There was no rationale around it. There was no because of this feature and that function and that. So that I think actually that to me is why it's been such a good thing. This sort of blossoming of the language scape, because if you want to call it that, because you suddenly got choices and you've kind of got to think about, well, what are the trade-offs exactly, in fact?
Yeah, and to me, that is what the job of a software engineer is all about. I mean, it's not it's not being able to program, not being the world's expert on a particular programming language. It's being able to understand the constraints you're actually working in, both technical and business and financial, and actually producing a solution that doesn't make your company go bust, and hopefully actually keeps your business at least sustainable. And helps like either the company do more or the people using the software do more, and therefore generate more revenue.
Do you think there's such a direct correlation there, though? I always feel like the choice of programming language is often, especially in the corporate world, completely disconnected from those business discussions. It's just, I mean, I know you're laughing, but I think but that's almost like, the day one conversation with the business people is, I don't give a fuck what it's written in, just make it do this.
But isn't the major reason of businesses failing is not just the technology, right? So it's not like just because they picked C, so we're going to die. And I mean, that's not usually that's not the problem.
Yeah,
maybe 5%. I don't know.
Yeah, the choice of language is usually the kind of the least effect of a business.
Maybe it takes a lot of stick though. It's a kind of victim, it's a kind of scapegoat that's easy to point at. Oh yeah,
totally. Because they wrote everything in Clojure, so we're dead. Yeah, exactly.
I've seen that so many times. That we have to use this language, and it's usually down to the choice of language for a lot of companies is down to hiring. Or the perception, or should I say, the perception of hiring, because it's if they feel that they can't hire somebody for a language, they'll not accept it to go into production, because how are we going to get somebody to do this? Oh my God! Oh, it's not as if somebody could actually learn how to use a language, and most of the time, even if you know a language, it doesn't guarantee you actually understand what somebody else has written. Especially if they made a right hash of it.
But isn't that the other part of it, though, that, a lot, I mean, I think you're right about, there's a HR aspect to it, but there's also a kind of, who in the technical community is in a position of authority. If those people actually know about languages, then they will tend to be more open to different languages. And if those people in authority are, they're just Java people, or, they're just C# people, or whatever, they're just in a kind of zombie state in terms of languages. Maybe it's not as in their own intellect, but in terms of their perception of where languages are, in terms of the impact of a language, good or minus, they will tend to just think about the hiring aspects of things and not actually about anything to do with the intrinsic nature of that decision.
Yeah, I think it's such a diverse amount of people inside the industry. It's like everybody's got lots of different concerns and constraints that they're worried about. I think the nice thing is that in general, the developer community is more aware of the fact there are different languages out there and more keen to experiment with them, and also more able to experiment with them as well. I mean, I think you could even claim that that Git and GitHub has actually made languages more accessible because people are sharing example code. And you can download that code and try it out, which I think is also like a huge enabler. Without that, I think it would have limited the amount of languages that people are prepared to go and try out. I still think some people are always going to go and try the latest thing. I mean, I know there's plenty of consultancies that have gone out and they've gone to a company and whoever's lead on that has decided, we'll use this language because I want to understand how to use this language in a project. And that's a little bit risky. I mean, it's interesting for all the people on that project, but as long as the consultancy backs them up and actually will help them implement it if it all goes wrong in some other language, then that's okay. But it's about managing risk, and some people do that better than others, and some people understand what the risks are more than others, and some people just say, well, let's do it. And I think with startups, there's a lot more startups these days as well, so they're much more open to trying different languages as well. I worked with quite a few startups using Clojure, and it's really served them well. I mean, there's usually somebody who's kind of realized the benefit of using that particular language for the startup, and where it fits and where it doesn't fit in. So if you look at like companies like Uswitch, which are a big Clojure shop in London, but they also use other technologies for certain other parts of it. So there's like a lot of the back end is all in Clojure, but some of the front end is still in JavaScript because they're not quite as confident as using Clojure script in there because they haven't got the experience. And they'd rather kind of put something that they're more confident in on the front end than kind of risk like something that's a bit more unknown to them. Although if they had like a bunch of if they had a JavaScript developer team that was very comfortable with Clojure script, then that would be a lot easier choice for them.
Yeah. It's a funny one, though, isn't it, with the front end? Because I often think that, you think about and it's about context to some extent as well, in the sense that if you're just thinking about everything as a programming problem, then you will tend to choose the language that suits that thing. But often there are they're designers or there are other people involved in that process that maybe are more familiar with JavaScript or more familiar with certain like UI frameworks or whatever that are conducive to an environment where JavaScript sort of wins. And in that case, it's not just those developers per se, but it's like everything around them is like a JavaScript friendly or JavaScript ecosystem. So you changing that language is a much more complicated thing than just like it's picking out a Jenga brick. It's like it's very difficult if you just change the language. Unless you've got everything kind of that can play nicely in the ecosystem, then you've got a problem.
Well, it does seem to be that. I mean, at the moment, you could view the world as like, give me a JavaScript, give me a JSON API, and I can change the world. I think that is the case because it's love it or hate it. I mean, JSON has become like an ubiquitous way to throw information around that's fairly lightweight. It's not perfect in any sense of the word, but it is common. It's known to people. It's fairly easy to pick up. Although if you start looking at like really big GeoJSON files that I've been looking at, then it's that's one way to slow down your REPL.
But isn't that another world? The data formats world. And I mean, not to get too far off topic, but anyway, everything's on topic today.
There's a topic,
but
remind me of the topic.
Yeah, I mean, we started talking about XML before. Then everyone's gone to JSON. But of course, Google said no, we don't want to do that. We want to use protobufs. And then there's all this like Avro stuff. And then, actually, I'll tell you something, and you've probably never heard. I don't know if you've even heard of this, but it's been going for a while. We're using a data format at work now called CBOR, which is actually quite nice. It's kind of like a combination of.
Is it your proprietary thing? Or
No, it's a proper standard. It's a IETF standard, and it was a shock to me, but it's something that cryptocurrency people use quite a lot, and it's basically a sort of binary format of JSON. So you write like essentially you can write, and David Nolan has written a sort of parser for ClojureScript for this as well now. So,
but why not transit or something then?
Well, because you want to address things like C, where there isn't a good transit library for C.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, but that's like everything's got a sweet spot, dude. It's like,
I think it's the same with
when your entire stack is Clojure and ClojureScript and all this stuff, then it makes sense to use transit.
The ecosystem is often like IoT environments, which are very small, and they only have C. Getting a transit composer on a you would have to write it from scratch.
Yeah. So, but you did write some from scratch, or David wrote something from scratch for that format in ClojureScript. Then,
well, not really. He just made small adaptations to a JavaScript library. So it's actually
okay.
It's quite a small thing, It was just a very small shim on top of the thing that was existing there. But I'd look into it anyway because CBOR is very, very interesting. It's a standard protocol, but it's very lightweight and it integrates very well with Eden and other stuff like that. So just a little.
That's interesting, yeah, because I worked at a bank. I'm not going to say which one.
We'll figure it out.
It was the world's biggest bank, apparently.
To protect the guilty. I mean, innocent.
And it was fairly recently, so I did have the pleasure of actually using Clojure. I mean, that's the reason I took the job is because it was a Clojure team, and some of the Clojure we were also working with jr0cket as well, so it was an opportunity to learn from them as well.
Nice.
And it was really good. But there was a lot of legacy architecture and design. So we re-implemented an application that had been written in C++. Which I heard some very interesting stories about how successful or unsuccessful that actually was, and it wasn't quite doing the throughput that they were expecting. And I think one of the stories was that the team that was managing the previous application would ring up the other developers that were using it to store, because it's basically an application that stored data from a whole range of different systems written in a whole different bunch of languages, and this team that was managing the previous application would ring all the other developer teams up to say, well, could they stop sending them data? And this is in production, which is not good. So it was like it was a re-implementation of that in Clojure, and it's pretty good. And we were getting, I think we were doing something like 30 million transactions a day, and I think we were using about 0.03% of the CPU.
Oh, nice.
So definitely Clojure can perform quite nicely. Certainly better than the implementation of the previous one.
Just to go back to your journey topic again. So you started doing some Haskell, or not commercially?
No, that was at university.
Java?
Yeah, so Haskell at university, then Java commercially, and then I wanted to get back into functional programming. So at the time, I think it was around like 2008, 2009. Yeah. Then everything was about like Scala, because they got some funding from the EU. And maybe I should get some funding for the EU while I've still got a chance. I've got 6 months. And I think I even actually went on to a 2-day training course by Martin Odersky himself.
Oh, wow.
Oh, cool.
And the most important lesson he taught me was complexity is bad. Unfortunately, I don't think that was the lesson he was supposed to teach me. So,
well, he didn't learn that lesson himself, that's for sure.
And
we're going to spend talking for the next 10 minutes while your sample program compiles. So, complexity, bad thing.
Yeah, so that was kind of the experience we would get at the dojo. So I started running a dojo and so a coding dojo once a month. That was around 2009, and because there was like lots of talks that I didn't really. I kind of understood bits of it on Scala, and lots of people were keen on like talking about Scala, but I actually wanted to use it. And so we did the coding dojos. We'd go there, meet up on an evening for an hour and a half, decide on a problem, and then try and code that in Scala. We'd all get into little groups of like 3, 4, 5 people, and then show what we created at the end. And a lot of it looked like Java to start with.
But that was the appeal, right? So you could write Java in Scala.
Yeah, you could write basically write Java without the semicolons.
Exactly. That looks kind of sort of like Python, so you can get away with that. Yeah.
But it was like the compile time was just really slow, and so we all huddle around, like, because first of all we started with just like 2 people at the keyboard, and they do something, and then we just sit there and wait for it to do something, and then like a minute later we do it, and we were all excited about SBT, which is a build tool, because you didn't have to write XML for the configuration. So that's quite nice.
Remember what that used to stand for, John?
Simple.
Yes,
simple build tool.
Used to stand for simple build tool.
Yeah.
But the
irony.
I run that for about a year, and then I managed to delegate that to somebody else. But I didn't know anything about going to a dojo, so I started going to the Python and Clojure dojos.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I went to a Clojure dojo, I thought, what is this language? It's like alien technology. It's like, I don't understand it. But it was like, I did find it fascinating, and I think after about a year or so, I kind of started to really kind of appreciate it and start to understand, this is quite interesting. And then I kind of had the kind of moment at like this clarity of moments that, I just write def and defen, and that's it. And like everything else is like, I just put a list in here and a map in there and a set in there.
Did you notice at the dojos that the turnaround time was different?
We certainly got a lot more done in the Clojure one.
That's what I mean.
Like compile cycle was a lot shorter.
The REPL more at that one, or where people still compiling and running things. How much of a REPL-driven experience were the dojos giving you at that time?
I think when I first started going to the one, it was a little bit slower because everybody was using, everybody was trying to use Emacs and Slime, and so Slime was the Lisp version of the REPL, but it just being tweaked for Clojure. It wasn't until Cider, all hail our Lord and God Buzz, who created the awesome project to actually make Clojure really work very well with Emacs.
Yeah.
And then people really started using the REPL all the time. In fact, a lot of people were just doing things in the REPL initially, and then remembering to save their code out. And then people moved into actually just writing code in the source code file and then evaluating that as you go along. And I think that was around about the time when Lighttable came out. People could realize they could just write a source code file and just evaluate pieces of that source code file. And that really did kind of push the whole REPL-driven development stuff. So it was quite nice.
Yeah, but you're also running the Clojure bridge now, right? Or you have been running it for a long time now?
Yeah, I seem to run everything. I've been trying to delegate that to everybody else, but maybe I'm just a bit of a tyrant when it comes to running events. I don't know, or people. I've got people involved. People help, but I think in terms of driving them, then it's I do a lot of work around to just make sure things happen. People. I mean, the coding dojos have been going on forever. I mean, USwitch and ThoughtWorks have been running a coding dojo for. I don't know. Well, ThoughtWorks has been running one for, I think it started around 2009, and they had a bit of a gap, so they've been doing it for like nearly a decade. And I think USwitch were doing one early, like 2010s, like 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
And they started doing the Clojure bridge. We did a Clojure bridge at Clojure Bridge London at USwitch in around, I think it was 2014. And we were completely clueless. We had no idea what to do. And we turned up for a meeting of the organizers, like I think about a week before. And we didn't have I didn't have any idea what to do. There's lots of documentation, but it kind of didn't really say an awful lot to what we needed to do. And we've evolved it a lot since then. So I've rewritten around curriculum as well, which also kind of led into me like writing more tutorials and workbooks and so on. But yeah, that's been great. I mean, we've done that. I think we've done about 13, 14 events, and it's kind of our Rolls Royce, our kind of like flagship event. We make a lot of effort to make it more than just here's a bit of pizza, I'll cook a bit of cold pizza, and let's do some code. So it's more of an experience because it's geared to. It's for those people who don't know. I mean, Clojure is geared towards underrepresented groups, and so the one we usually support the most is for women. And so we get so it's a women first policy that we get a whole bunch. We get students to sign up, and if you're a man, then you obviously need to be invited by a woman. That helps kind of start introducing some more balance into the kind of like the audience in general in the Clojure community. So that's been really great. And the first time I think we ran it, we got nearly 40 people turning up. So it was really enthusiastic, and we've had around about 25 to 30 students for each one of those as well. But we do we do get some nice food. We've had like curries and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's really, really tasty food, and not just pizza. So it's a really nice experience.
But what do you see when you're looking at these people who, I'm assuming they don't have any previous programming experience, right?
Well, we get about 50-50. So like 50% of people have got almost no programming experience, or maybe a little bit of HTML, and they've kind of dabbled with a little bit of like an online JavaScript tutorial. And then there's other people, so the other 50% are kind of doing their first language, but they're only in like their first year and a bit of doing that. So they're still fairly new in the environment.
But what do they struggle with? Especially with Clojure.
I think it's I think the part of the problem initially was we were just giving them too much information, and so we banned all talk about macros. First rule of Clojure Base: don't talk about macros.
Don't talk macros.
Because there's so many interesting things, and I think it's about setting perceptions of the coaches as well. One of the nice things is we always had like several coaches, a lot of coaches that volunteered, so from the community, and we got to a place where we're getting one coach per student, and so you could get like one-on-one coaching help from that student as well. It's a bit like we got something called Code Bar that like runs regularly here that do the same thing, but for all sorts of different languages, and that really helped kind of everybody work at their own pace. Whereas if you're in a bigger group, then you have to you have to keep up with everybody else. Some people will get one explanation. So we used to do a lot of getting students to explain things to each other, which really helped as well. But yeah, it's I think there's a lot of easy things you can introduce in terms of Clojure. If you start at the right place, if you start trying to do all the theory behind it, I mean, if you start talking about category theory, I mean, like you've just lost everybody as well. So, even including me, probably. But yeah, I mean, you start off. You can. There's a lot of really simple things in Clojure. I mean, you have a list and a vector. And a map, and those are fairly easy kind of modeling constructs to take. And you want to give a map a name, so you've got def, and then there's lots of functions you can use. So you start introducing a bunch of functions, but it's coming up with some good analogies as well. So things like map and reduce, I mean, they're kind of the bread and butter of Clojure, and they're quite hard to understand and quite hard for some of the volunteers to actually explain, some of the coaches to explain that. So we did things like the map reduce sandwich, which is a nice visualization of what map and reduce does. So like with with the map reduce sandwich, you kind of map a function called knife over all your ingredients, and then you get sliced ingredients. So you get sliced bread, sliced tomato, and so on. And then you reduce those ingredients to make a whole bunch of sandwiches.
Nice.
And things like that, kind of like, oh, I understand it. But if you just kind of sometimes just showing things at a REPL can help as well. And just doing simple examples and then kind of building up to bigger examples as well. So a lot of the things we did were just really, really simplistic stuff you would find in the first like 10 or 15 kind of exercises of Clojure. which also is a really good learning tool. We use a lot of Clojure in the coding dojos. It's a great way to get people on board, because you can do, if people are motivated, they can do at least the first 24 Clojure exercises in like an hour and a half, and it gives them a great sense of.
Go on, sorry.
And even the interface is also really easy to.
And you don't have to install anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's useful to have like an editor to kind of play around with stuff when you get further along. But for the first like 20 or so, I mean, you can just play around in the Clojure itself on the web page.
I was just going to say, what is the? I know it's all about like inclusion and helping underrepresented groups, but what do you in terms of like follow up? Like people do this like day of Clojure, which is really good, and I can imagine people get pretty buzzed because they get a lot of feedback. They, like you said, they've got a lot of great like one-to-one stuff. What's the follow up look like on that, and what do people do after it? What's the stories?
Yeah, sure. Obviously everybody has a Sunday off because their brains are just throbbing with all the information they've done. It's quite a long day because it is we do a little warm up on the Friday just to make sure we've got like something installed if they want to kind of keep on doing Clojure afterwards. And then the whole day Saturday is it's like 10 till 5 with a few breaks. So there's a lot of kind of stuff that they can get through, but they don't. Very rarely, there's so much information in there, so many tutorials now that we've added. It's not possible to do everything. So there's a lot of stuff they can do to continue on from that. But the more rewarding things were actually seeing people come to the other events that we were running. So the Clojure Bridge London events, we do maybe 1, 2, 3 of those a year. But then we were doing 2, 3, 4 events a month. And so it was great so it was like a drop in the ocean compared to all the other events that we were running, with things like Hack the Tower and the 2 dojos, and we used to do like a monthly presentation as well. And we would get people who came to Clojure Bridge London to actually come to those events as well, especially the Hack the Tower one, where they could just, again, it was like another day where it was open to everybody, where they could come along and try out stuff and work with other people and continue on their learning as well. So we got quite a lot of people coming to that event as well. So that was really good.
So speaking of these events, I think you're also involved with the Reclojure.
Oh yes. Well, I'm trying not to be. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that I spent several years organizing the Clojure X, which is the Skills Matter conference.
Yeah.
Very good, by the way. I went to the last one that you had.
Yes.
It was really
Did you
good.
speak at the last one?
I did, yes. Sort of.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
You called it something. An event, an activity, an action or something. You described it in some way, but it wasn't at all.
Weren't you singing at one point?
I was, yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
Probably.
And then Bojidar, the cider man, was doing press-ups for some reason.
I think it was certainly the most memorable one of that as well. I think the videos are actually back up again because somebody actually put some money into Skills Matter because they went bust. So that's the reason we had Reclojure. Is I think it was only like 3 or 4 weeks before the conference. There was an announcement that Skills Matter had gone bankrupt, had gone into administration, and so like nobody knew for a few days what was actually happening with the conferences, and then we kind of realized that they're not going to happen. So I think it was Renzo and Alex and a few other people got together, and I just advised them really, and just made sure that they covered all the basics, which they had done mostly. I mean, I didn't really have to do much, but just help them out where I could. And so we're going to keep on doing that Reclojure thing. But one of the ideas was that it's we want to try and make it a conference in a box. Obviously, there's not much point at the moment because nobody's doing conferences. But
maybe it's conference in a box.
Not in a box.
In a box could be possible, yeah.
But the idea was that you could just open the box and then you could run your own conference anywhere you wanted to. There's I think the fact that it's a community conference, it was a free conference, so even if somebody bought a ticket, they could come to that. But I mean, because there was no chance of people getting tickets back, I don't think. It was a conference for everybody to come along, and we got, I think it was one of my most popular turnouts, I think, in terms of people actually being very motivated that want to come. We kept, because we put a limit of, I think we put a limit of like 100 tickets initially, and then people were asking us, "Oh, can we come? Can we come? Can we come?" And there's so many people interested in coming along. It was great. And we managed to get some of the speakers from the previous conference. They'd agreed to come to this conference as well. Obviously not the ones that we had to fly in, so because we didn't have any budget for that, unfortunately. But yeah, it was a great experience. We had Malcolm Sparks from jr0cket closing it out as well, with giving a really interesting talk about data formats and how we should probably use Eden or some form of binary JSON. That was really cool.
Yeah.
See, Bo.
I do have some idea of all the difficult work that you need to do for the conference. So I think I was part of the Dutch Clojure Day free conference. Especially free conference means it's mental whether you're gonna pull it off or not. Because I mean, some of the speakers were very kind. I mean, they don't need travel expenses or something, but still we want to make sure that everything is done a bit. But the venue and those things are not free, so we have to put in a lot of effort to get that kind of shit done.
Yeah,
and I was really, really looking forward to attending Dutch Clojure Day this year, because I stopped being I took a step back and, okay, this is too much work, so I'm not going to do too much work because I'm too old for this shit. So, so I'm going to sit back and then listen to the talks now, finally. But this whole coronavirus shit happened and everything is now upside down. So it's but it's a really, I mean, I do appreciate from both sides, as an attendee, and also I've seen the side of organization. So it's a fucking really hard work.
Yeah, I was getting a little bit burnt out with because I was organizing the meetups, like the presentations. The dojos themselves have kind of been pretty much automated. So it's only when kind of we're losing a host or something like that. But I mean, ThoughtWorks has been really great. They've always found somebody else to host it as well. So that Yelena was hosting it for like many years, and she's got changing circumstances. She just had a baby. Congratulations. And she found somebody to take it over, and he's doing a great job at the moment as well, until the coronavirus kicked in. And he's been doing a great job on that as well. Yeah, something like that. And I've got USwitch. There's like a team of 4 people at USwitch that take in turns to organize and run the dojo as well. So they're all doing what I used to do. So I finally managed to delegate. So that was great.
Nice. So you're distilling all this. So years and years of experience, Java, Clojure, of course, a bit of Scala, and then now you're now distilling all these things into multiple books. Then, so what are you writing these days?
Oh my god!
Bring it up to date, John. Come on.
Well, yes. The one thing I'm definitely not writing is a book on Scala. Not that there's anything wrong with books on Scala. Well, I do have a signed book from Martin Odersky. If anybody wants that, I'm open to offers. It's a physical book that's been signed by the man himself.
The 800-page one.
Yes, and it's
cool.
It's unread as well, so it's in pristine condition.
Pristine condition.
Hey, if only you have read that thing, you could be an amazing Scala programmer by now.
Yeah, if I couldn't get his 2-day workshop, then I'm not going to get his book. So there we go.
Good point.
But yeah, I've been doing books for a while. Well, the books started off as workshops for conferences. So there was like a Clojure one to start with, and then there's a Clojure web apps. So specifically like building like Ring and Composure. I used to use that quite a lot I used both of those at the Hack the Tower event. So like we just spent a whole day working on it and developed things from there as well. And then I decided I could do front-end development and started writing JavaScript. Because one of the interesting things about ClojureScript is it actually convinces you that you can actually do front-end development. even if you've never done it before, because it's so much easier than doing it in any other language I've tried anyway. It's certainly a lot easier to do that in JavaScript, to a certain point anyway. It's certainly like your first website. I mean, my practicalli website is written in Clojure script. Although a big part of that is just choosing the right CSS framework to help you make it look pretty. But it makes it so much easier to do things, I find, especially if you know a little bit of Clojure. It's actually quite simple to actually build a front end. So I've been trying to codify my learning into the Clojure script book. That needs an awful lot of work, I think, still. But I did. I was very lucky to just receive some funding from Clojurists Together.
Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, I was about to talk about that stuff as well.
So we'll come back to that in a second. But so I've got those 3 books. Then there's a Spacemacs book, and because I've been doing a bunch of data science things in my broadcasts recently, then I've started a data science book as well. It's got no competition to things like the Dragons books on data science. They are really amazing. But just some like basic data visualization, the extract and transformation side of things. So basically, it's more like basic data science in Clojure for dummies. Because I'm not a data scientist either. So, but it's kind of shows
data science
me
for you basically.
It is basically. Well, all my books are for me. It's just other people find them useful, so that's really good.
But where can they find them? Or us, where can we find them?
Well, there's a special offer at the moment. They're all available absolutely free on the internet. And so if you go to practicalli.github.io is the main website, and all written in Clojure script. And all the books are on the front page with links to all the videos as well. All the videos are on YouTube, so people can subscribe to my YouTube video as well. I've got over 400 people on there and more really joining all the time now, so it's quite nice. And all the books are on there. And then I've got a GitHub practicalli organization with all the code in as well. So it's fairly easy to find. You can also go to practical.li. I was trying to find practical something, and the only one that was available was Liechtenstein. That's why it's LI. It was also considerably cheaper than a few of the other options as well. I think there was one that was about £300 or $300 a year. So that was not quite. I don't quite make that amount of money for the books.
So tell us about the Clojures Together thing that you're going to do. Or you started doing already?
I haven't actually started yet. They've only just announced it. I haven't got the contract yet. But I expect that any day.
We'll hold the podcast back a little bit.
No, it's been announced, so it's out on Twitter. It's okay. I think I'm planning to start in May, like sometime the first week of May. I think that's when because the very basics of it. So you get some funding, which goes over the 3 months, and so you do some reports on what you're doing, so that the Clojurists Together community can understand what they're getting from that investment as well. So it's they're fairly simple, but I've been as part of the process for applying it. You basically have to let people know what you're actually getting the funding for, and so I've laid out kind of like an overview of each of the books and what I want to deliver from them. And so with this funding, my aim is to get all of those books up to scratch. With I think the web apps one is probably more detailed one, and so that starts with things like Ring and Composure, going to Composure API. And then we're doing things like Luminous and Pedestal and HTTP kits for performance and so on. And then Yada and Biddy and Reatit and components, frameworks. And then finally wrapping up with Duct and things like Duct and Edge as well. So it'll be quite, because one of the things that people struggle with is like, I want to build this, what do I use? Because Clojure gives you a function. And quite a lot, 600 functions if you look in the Clojure core. But people are very used to using frameworks, But there's usually a library for that, and then which libraries do I put together for this particular situation? So that's what I'm trying to give somebody like a basic journey of like the most common kind of approaches people take for building like web apps or doing something like that. So that's what I'm aiming to do.
So it's like a cookbook type thing.
Yeah, with lots of very practical exercises and so on, so you can build the websites and trying to do a few different things in each of those things, each of the different libraries, and give some commentary on why you would use them, some positioning really. So it's trying to do, I guess, in a way, it's doing marketing, but like the proper developer marketing, where you're actually explaining why you would use this library. So it's how you would, if you were a lead developer, how you would explain to your team why you're making decisions over certain libraries. So we include a lot of that stuff as well. And it's not just my opinion. I'm sourcing a lot of the information from the Clojure community as well, and kind of taking an opinionated view of everybody's kind of feedback on that as well.
But how do you see, because of course, plan for the book and also writing the book and also experience and teaching people, because there is this discussion around Clojure always comes back on when somebody's starting. It's like, there is no framework, there is no one thing, there is no. So how do you see this? Because if I see that book, for example, there are like, everything is a library, different things, and how they work together. If I start with Rails, it's just Rails generate or something. I mean, it's been a long time since I used Rails, but you get the idea. So how do you see this argument for framework versus no framework?
Yeah, I don't really like framework. Well, it's not that I don't like frameworks. I think frameworks have a very hard constraints usually. And you look at whether you're looking at Rails or you're looking at Spring. There's some, and even like the EJB framework kind of thing, you've got some very hard kind of constraints. You can do X, Y, Z in these frameworks, and everything works fine. You can do them really quickly. But if you want to do ABC, you're just fighting against the framework over and over again. And then when somebody decides to redesign the framework completely, like you go from play 1 to play 2 in Scala, then you have to rewrite your application anyway.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that, I mean, XYZ is essentially someone's view of what is legitimate, and ABC is someone's view of what is not legitimate. That's why frameworks annoy me a little bit, is because they're kind of saying this is the right way of doing it. That's why our framework does this. If you're trying to do something else, then you're, by implication at least, wrong.
Yeah, I think in a way it's also worse than that, because you're delegating a decision to somebody else. You're delegating a lot of decisions usually. Especially the bigger the framework, the more decisions you're delegating away to somebody else, and maybe not even thinking about them. And so we have to do this because we delegate a whole bunch of things already. We don't kind of build an operating system. We don't build a desktop environment. We don't kind of build all our tools and stuff. We do delegate an awful lot of stuff, but you can't delegate everything. You have to make some decisions yourself. And sometimes it makes perfect sense to go off and use a framework. But if that's your only decision, then I think that's massively flawed. And I think that the nice thing about Clojure is the one thing that everybody complains about is saying, well, there's no framework.
Yeah.
Because then you have to think.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of at least think about it. Even if you go off and just use a template like Luminous, which is a great example of putting things together. But then you're not tied to those decisions that you make. You can pull things out and change things around, and you can grow into making some of those decisions later on. But it encourages you to actually make those decisions in the first place. And I think it's a little bit unfair to call people lazy, but it's having that decision. They've just delegated that decision without really necessarily thinking whether they should do or not. And I've had some discussions like that. Yeah, Clojure would be great if there was only a Rails framework. I think that would be not great. I don't think it would be bad, but I think if that's where everybody started, and that's what everybody thought Clojure was about, I think that would be very bad. And so, I mean, and in a sense, we've already got that anyway. I mean, if somebody wants to build a website, so a back-end website, we've already got a Rails framework. It's called Ring and Composure. It's because it's what 90% of the people use to build a back-end website.
But so looking at all these from the landscape, what is your favorite pieces to pick to compose your framework?
I think we normally call it a stack, don't we?
A stack, yes.
Sure. Let's call it a different name now.
And that would be, yeah. I think a framework is a very contentious kind of word, and sometimes it is a simple case of just we change the word, or we don't talk about it. I think people have used micro frameworks and things like that, but it's still a framework. But I think it's a decision that you're making, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, what is the decision you're making? I like building. I do like the simplicity of building a website in using Ring and Composure, and it's so easy. And doing the like Composure APIs. I mean, there's nothing simpler than building an API with the Composure API template, and it includes Swagger Open API as it's called now, and it just works. And Metasyn have done a really nice packaging of some decisions, which they do explain. I mean, if you read the README in the project explains a lot more about some of the decisions behind it, and then you start looking at some of the component frameworks with it as well, because there's no. I mean, how many frameworks have you used where you can just come in and change like the component lifecycle with just like one line of code? And being able to do that, having an appreciation that you can come in and do that I think that's an important part of learning Clojure. And if we take that away from people, I think we're doing them a disservice, because I think one of the things that makes Clojure special, it's a quite long list, but one of the things I think is important is it gets people thinking. And it's not just hammock time. It's about, okay, it's my responsibility for this design of this application. What am I going to use? Not just what does the thing, how can I just get this thing out the door and working? And I think part of that is because there's a lot more kind of experienced people using Clojure. So there's a lot of that in the community, the discussion. But I think the community itself just encourages, because you've got all these different libraries you can use, there's a discussion that's inherent in having choice.
Yeah.
And if you take away that choice, then you lose the discussion.
The way I liken it to is kind of like, what's your favorite music? It's like, well, okay, great question. It will change week by week, and it will change year by year. And maybe I like jazz, maybe I like classical, maybe I like rock, maybe I like pop, maybe I like folk. And actually, when you get a framework, you're stuck on folk, and you bet, and you, if you don't like it, you can fork off. Oh, sorry, nice. That was I just thought about that one. Okay, carry on.
That was a pun worthy of the Clojure podcast.
No, I mean that's one. It's deafened level humor.
Sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
There's you should submit that to the Clojure Design podcast. They love puns. I actually really do like the. They actually, I'm probably going to borrow a lot of the learnings from the Clojure Design podcast. They've just covered a recent series on doing sort of web application development, and some lot of really interesting stuff there as well. And it's a really nice podcast to listen to actually.
Okay. So yeah, I think these guys are doing really good work. I got to say, because at first when I listened to the first one or two episodes, and I was thinking, what the fuck, to be honest. It's what are they doing? They're basically talking through code on a podcast.
As if we know what we're doing.
No. But I mean, I thought that the whole conceit was ridiculous, But actually, it turns out that they're really talking about what you're saying about, John, which is they're talking about design decisions, and they're backing it up with sort of examples and pipelines and stuff like this. And so it turns out, I think, kudos to those guys. I think it started off being a bit weird for me. I didn't really get it at first, but persevering with it, I think they are doing a great job. Yeah.
Yeah, they did some nice sections on things like laziness and also the recursive functions as well. That was really good. I really enjoyed that bit because it might be because I was doing some stuff at the time. It's like going from, and I quite like this idea. I don't know if they've discussed it or not, but they gave me this idea of this Clojure abstraction mountain, which is a bit like Kilimanjaro rather than Mount Everest. And you kind of start off like with simple functions, and then you start going up, and you might do like a loop recur or like a recursive function, and then you've got reduce and reducing functions, and then you've got things like sequences, abstractions, and you've got all the way up to transducers and so on. And it's quite a nice kind of visualization. So I'm trying to find a way to actually visualize that and make sense of that. And one of the things I want to do in the Clojure book is try and group like functions into families of like, I want to do this. What are my options? Because like the Clojure Docs website is really good if you know roughly what you're looking for. Yeah. And because it'll, even if you don't find the right one, it's got links to other ones. But it's kind of like grouping things together, I think, in like these little functional families inside Clojure Core.
Right, yeah.
And then you can kind of know, well, if I know one, then I can go and look at its relatives and see what kind of similar kind of things it does. It might not be exactly the same, but it's
like a taxonomy type thing.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, very.
Isn't that dangerously close to Haskell way of thinking? Oh, is this a functor? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Is this a monad? Yeah, that makes sense now.
It's more about its purpose rather than like its design kind of thing. So, and so things like partition and group by and sort by and stuff like that. It's kind of like is these are the kind of the different flavors of crisps you can buy in it. So you got buy an all sorted packet of crisps, and these are the different crisps you can get, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't need to talk about types or anything. There won't be any types in my book apart from the type function. That would be probably the only thing I cover.
Oh, very good. Yes,
but I'm a bit curious if there is such a taxonomy somewhere that describes these computations or groups them, right?
Well,
there must be something.
You know, there was I was listening to, funny enough, talking about other podcasts. There was the REPL podcast with
Daniel.
Second name. Come on, we've had him on the show as well.
Okay.
Daniel Compton. Sorry, Daniel.
Yes.
Top lad.
If you're listening to this,
very, very good guy.
A couple of edges ago.
But he had another firm favourite of ours on there, Mr. Michael Borkant, Bork Dude, and he was talking about one of his.
He's my other hero.
Yeah, top lad. And he was talking about Refind, which is this thing he has, which where you can specify like the inputs and the inputs of an argument, and it will find the thing that you're looking for. So that could be, something to play into your world there a little bit, John.
That is linked off my practicalli Clojure book if you go to the side links. But yeah, that's really, really useful. Although every now and again, I know it's useful because when it doesn't work, I don't know what to do now. I have to think. I can't Bork Dude think for me. I quite like
quite a lot of thinking for you. In fairness,
there's a huge amount. Yeah, I mean, it's like especially CLJ Condo. It's one thing I don't know how I'm actually programmed before without it. It just tells me all the things I do wrong. It's great, and in a way that's not annoying as well. So it's quite nice because it's like having a code review but without the pain and embarrassment.
Anyway, but enough of him. But so
I could spend a whole hour and a half talking about Bork Dude.
Yeah. I know.
We call this Bork Dude episode.
And I still wouldn't have covered half of it. Well, not even know like 1% of all the things he's written recently. So.
No, he's on fire. Yeah. He's on fire. Yeah. That's for sure. But Bashka's our current favourite. But anyway, yeah. So John, I remember. If we're going back in the day to, when I first sort of encountered you on the internet was when you were with JBoss, I think, and you did this. What was the framework thing that you did, actually? It was a framework back in the day, wasn't it? Not integral, immutant?
Immutant. I'm trying to remember that.
No, maybe it wasn't immutant, but it was something where you basically programmed Clojure and it ran in JBoss.
It was Toby.
I don't
Toby
think that was
Fowler
me.
and JBoss people.
Oh, that
wasn't me.
you.
No.
Fuck, okay.
I'd like to
No.
claim credit if I can. But
well, if Toby is not listening to this stuff, we can just say, "Hey, John made
sorry
it."
about
right?
that.
well, I mean, it does remind me of one of the things I did try briefly, but I didn't really. I don't think I really published it because I used to work for Salesforce, and that's quite interesting because they use Java. I did try and convince them to convert over to Clojure, but I was probably about 10 years too late. And in all fairness, and they were really great. They were very supportive of the Hack the Tower events we were running as well. But they had a platform. They had like a massive framework, massive platform. I mean, it was so big. The framework was so big, we called it a platform. And that was all written in Java, so Java Virtual Machine. But it also had like a web container in the front end, so you could basically just drop in like JavaScript, and then if you can drop in JavaScript, I can write Clojure scripts and put it in there as well. And everything around it was like an API, and they did a really interesting. I mean, the architecture of Salesforce is really interesting from an architectural point of view. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's written in a particular language. I mean, the design of a very scalable system like that is a really interesting read. And you can there's a white paper that they've got as well, which is quite interesting. You can just download it for free that explains the architecture. But yeah, just being able to put something into their web container, running that and just calling their APIs, it was great fun to be able to do that.
So maybe just because we covered a lot of ground, praising everything about Clojure. So if you take a critical look at Clojure, so what would you think the challenges or problems or places where we can improve from the language point of view or anything related to Clojure?
I think there's no massive like big problems. I mean, I think in Clojure X, not last year, I think in 2018, we had a few people raising their kind of pet peeves about things, but they're all quite niche. I mean, it's when you're hitting the kind of niche areas of computing that I think you start to see some of the rougher edges. Because I think it's hard to find fault with Clojure because it's the oldest young language out there. Because most of it is from 1958. And so it's already been. So I mean, I appreciate Rich Hickey spent 2 years thinking about it, but it's already had like a few decades as well as that. I mean, he kind of really did an amazing job to bring it to a platform. Well, to bring it to not just a platform, to bring it to so many different platforms as well. Because I mean, that's a nice thing. I always think of it as a sort of blackbird. It comes in and just lays its eggs wherever it wants to, in other people's operating systems and virtual machines and so on.
Cuckoo, isn't it?
A cuckoo. Oh yes, so cookie. Yeah. Yes.
Blackbird.
Blackbird. One of those things. One of those birds that does that. But I think, to be honest, I think the biggest challenge is the challenge with any language, and that's like learning it. And I guess that's what my books are there for, to help people. And you can never do enough. And I think with languages that are very targeted at a specific area, I think you take like Elm, which is a great language for doing front end stuff. But if you want to do anything else, then you don't, basically. But because they're working on a very specific problem, then it's very easy to write very good documentation just for that. But when you've got a general purpose language, which is what Clojure is, how do you write a definitive guide for a general purpose language? I mean, it would take longer than my lifetime. But there is a lot of really useful stuff. And I think this was really highlighted with, and still in a way it's highlighted with the Clojure script side of things. I think when it first came out, it was so horrible to use. I mean, if you weren't an expert in JavaScript, you couldn't really use Clojure script. If you didn't know kind of like the environment, then it was, because we did a dojo with Clojure 1, which is a web framework which is a sample project that somebody came out with.
Oh I remember.
We spent, I think there was about 7 groups of about 3 or 4 people, and we spent an hour and a half, and I think 2 groups got something to work. and the rest of them just felt so stupid. But I think for the first couple of years, there wasn't really a huge amount of stuff out there. It was quite difficult to do ClojureScript. And I think there's still a challenge around ClojureScript if you don't know JavaScript. If you're not familiar with the JavaScript landscape and you don't know what all the different NPMs you should be using are, I think that's still very difficult. One of the nice things, I mean, unless you, if you try and do it by yourself and just try and Google the internet, there's not a huge amount. You can only get so far. I think as a ClojureScript, the person who does the ClojureScript podcast, he's written a really great tutorial around like reframe and
jr0cket.
jr0cket.
Yeah, and that something that is ideal. I mean, I'd love to be able to write something of that kind of quality, or to be able to have the experience to write something of that quality as well. But I think that's kind of the limiting factor. Is it's kind of like there's not enough kind of guides that are up to date. But I think that can change now because, especially with Clojure has become. Well, somebody said Clojure was dead, so that means it's mainstream. So we've established Clojure is a viable language to use in companies now because somebody said it's dead. Because that's the mark of knowing when you can use a language and not be fired for it. Because somebody on the internet says it's dead. Because that worked for Clojure, so it worked for Java and it worked for COBOL. It's still working for COBOL, I think, as well. Yeah, because most of the libraries aren't changing very much. There's a lot of new libraries that are coming out, but I mean, there's not been huge amounts of changes in Ring and Composure, and so that's why. I mean, the book I wrote on the web apps stuff. I mean, a lot of that is like 3 years old, and it hasn't changed much at all, apart from a few point numbers in the libraries. Everything just works, and it's a nice thing about Clojure being backwards compatible. I mean, things don't change that much, so you can write some really useful guides to help people bring them into the community and get them productive and get them thinking about stuff. And then it's a lot easier. It's a lot more accessible. It seems like less like alien technology and more like just a general purpose language that we should just come and have fun with. But yeah, there are issues. People complain about things like core async, which I think is really nice, but I haven't really used it in anger enough. When we used it at the bank, I mean, we used it fairly simply to basically that we use core async to basically push through 30 million transactions a day onto Tibco, and it worked flawlessly. But then we weren't trying to do anything complex with it, and we weren't trying to do like futures and promises and so on. And so I think trying to just capture the experiences that people have, because we got a wealth of experiences on the community, is trying to capture that and codify that, and I guess that's one of the motivating things I have. I often go through the Clojurian Slack and the Zulip chat and just copy bits in and stick them in my Kanban board and say, well, yeah, that's a really interesting topic. We'll try and expand on that as well. And so I just want to capture that and expand on that as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the books for free, because I don't want to put these behind any kind of firewall. I want people to be able to learn this and also give me feedback as well on this as well, and continue to improve it that way. But I'm afraid I can't really think of anything terrible to say about Clojure, except for why didn't I use it when Rich Hickey released it? Well, maybe not when Rich Hickey released it, but maybe
maybe a bit later.
Maybe like the year afterwards. Yeah, 2008.
But John, I mean, not to, maybe want to force you down a controversial path, but don't you think?
let's force it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's something that happened in 1.10 which I think was like spectacular. Yeah, which was the change in the way that they reported errors. Yeah, this was. This was truly magnificent what they did there. But I still think that the exception processing, the error handling processing, I mean, to me that's still, it's not an Achilles heel anymore. They've definitely helped a lot. Things have improved tremendously, in the 1.10 release. But it still strikes me that knowing what went wrong in a Clojure program is definitely tricky.
Yeah, I think that like Java stack traces,
beginners, if you're teaching beginners,
Yeah, Java stack traces were always kind of weird, and there always was kind of some, when things go wrong, then having some experience of the Java platform was quite useful, and it's still, in a way, it still is quite useful, especially in terms of deployment. It's always useful to kind of know a little bit of stuff about like how to run things in the Java virtual machine. But yeah, like when things do go wrong, and your normal tools, like, I mean, I do rely on a lot of tools like the Cider Inspector and things like that, but they're more for kind of logic errors, like I get a result, but it's not the right result. But when it just goes bang, yeah, that's a bit more tricky. And yeah, that there is, it would be nice to have more tooling around that, more support around that. But yeah, I guess I've got used to those things, so I kind of turned a blind eye from that more specifically. But I think the one thing I would like to, I mean, the one thing I missed really from Clojure was this idea of spec. I think that kind of brought back this idea of defining contracts around my code and also my designs in terms of like the data structures that I was creating. And so I guess I am a little bit concerned as to the progress of Spec 2. In some ways, I'm comforted that they're actually thinking about that, but obviously then there's a part of me that wants the new shiny kind of new version that's like even better than like Spec 1. And I think it does stop me a little bit in kind of adopting Spec wider. But I think it's just the fact that it's still quite new for a lot of people as well. So they're kind of because people know like there's another version coming out that's going to be different, then it kind of does stop the adoption of Spec a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it's a very good thing, though. I mean, it's definitely.
Oh yeah,
that's the problem with it. It's like it's alpha, but it's beautiful. It's very addictive sugar, though. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
We want that sugar.
Well, I remember when I was at university, I built a bit of tool. It was like an object-oriented modeling tool, and it also had contracts, because contracts is something that's like ages, like from the 80s, really.
Oh, yeah.
Or probably even earlier. Yeah. But I discovered it from like the Rumbars OMT kind of OO kind of.
Right.
Certainly was deep in the OO object-oriented license design kind of world at that time, and yeah, the idea of like having contracts around that as well was just like an obvious thing to kind of use with Clojure as well. And when you also compare that to like having a type system as well, you've got a lot more flexibility with your contracts than you would with types, but it's still doing the same or possibly even more confidence in your code because of these contracts.
Yeah.
Right then, VJ. Are we going to start to wrap up now? It's an hour and a half, and I mean, John could go on all night, but we all of the streets are getting
dark. He's a cross country cycling dude, so he can continue.
The owls are hooting. You know?
Yeah, my cycling rides when I was riding across Britain, they were between 9 and 10 hours long. So yeah, right. I can go a bit longer.
Certainly.
We don't want the listeners to get saddle sore, though. You know.
That's why I'm standing up. I'm a bit saddle sore from yesterday.
Okay, so I think we are almost. I mean, let's put a comma here, so we can catch up again. And good luck with all the books, John. I think especially all the stuff that you're putting out there. I mean, I know a lot of people are complimenting on that one already on Slack, and I think on Reddit and everywhere. The especially you're making Spacemacs driven stuff, so people can see what is possible and how quickly they can get started with this stuff. I think for all the contributions.
I think you need to change your name, by the way, to John Prolifically. You know.
Yeah, I think so. Instead of practically.
Well, I would probably change it to John nearly as prolific as Bok Dude.
Hey, that should be as easy domain to get with a .de.
Yes,
probably cheaper.
Yes, I'm nearly.
But I mean, there is no. Of course, I mean, because putting all this volunteer work. I mean, running Clojure Bridge and different conferences and dojo and bringing people into the community. That's really, really appreciated, I think. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much,
and good luck with all the books. And I think so. This is the Clojure together thing is for 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to use it. So I mean, it's more. It is quite. It's more than I've earned for the rest of the year. So I'm going to use it as, and well, I'm going to use it obviously for the next 3 months, and then unless somebody gives me a job I can refuse, I'm going to keep on doing it until I've got at least those books finished. And I mean, the SpaceMax one's actually pretty up to date. I think I've more or less finished that now. There's always, I do have like 150 issues in my Kanban board for other ideas I want to add to it, but most of it is there, and it's just like improvements. So it's more than usable now. I know, make sure that all the books are very usable, and then and it's all as open as possible so people can actually see what other ideas they want to do, and obviously contribute as well. I've had some contributions from that as well, not just spelling mistakes, but there was a few in the early days when I was rushing things. But I want to try, and I think the biggest investment for this is to create some really nice video content as well. For this, that really does add to the extra dimension of these online guides as well.
Nice. So, is there any Patreon or GitHub sponsor stuff as well that people can contribute to you?
I did have a Patreon page, but I never really worked out how to use it. But there's I do have GitHub sponsorship. So if you're paying in dollars, you want to do that as well. There's a PayPal Me. People have contributed as well, so I appreciate everybody has done that as well. So you can pay that in any currency. There's just subscribing to my video channel as well. That's always a nice video, nice boost. And I'm going to set up a Libra Pay and a few others as well. But yeah, the biggest boost I've got really is and I have the biggest thanks for Clojure Together for voting for me as well. I know there's a lot of different really excellent projects there, so I really want to make the most out of this funding as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, John. Thanks a lot for sharing your time and all the hard work. So I hope you'll be staying healthy and safe in this tricky times.
Yes, it's interesting times, but I'm really excited to see what I can do in the next 3 months.
Nice. So that's it from us, I think. So stay safe, and tell, if you know somebody who is trying to drink bleach, tell them not to.
Oh my God!
So I hope I hope you don't know somebody who is going to do that kind of shit. But
even Trump supporters, yes, they don't deserve it.
Please
don't take the Donald Trump challenge. Yeah.
Exactly. Don't listen to bullshit from people who are not qualified. That's why we have guests mostly.
Hold on. This you're giving away the plot.
But I really appreciate like being on here as well. It's great. It's a great opportunity to talk for an hour and a half about all the random stuff that's in my head, and I'm sure I'll put a lot more stuff out there on the blogs as well. And it's been really enjoyable. I like this format of the podcast. It's a great way to have a good chat between developers, and it just happens to be recorded and shared on the internet for everybody to laugh at.
Yeah. That's what we bring: laughter and joy.
Excellent. And a few swear words.
And a little bit of closure.
A little bit of closure.
Nick, who the fuck told you we have swear words on this fucking podcast?
Oh, yes. That's not. I had to tell a certain person that the Clojure X was a family show. He did a good job. I don't think he swore at all, actually. So I was amazed.
Yeah. That's
not on the stage anyway.
Maybe he just did it quietly.
I was swearing so much off the stage,
Yes.
Anywho, that's it from us for this episode. Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Defan. And the awesome vegetarian music, or the track, is Melon Hamburger by Pizzeri. And the show's audio is mixed by Wouter Dullert. I'm pretty sure I butchered his name. Maybe you should insert your own name here, Dullert.
Wouter.
If you'd like to support us, please do check out our Patreon page, and you can show your appreciation to all the hard work, or the lack of hard work that we're doing. And you can also catch up with either Ray, with me, for some unexplainable reason. You want to interact with us, then do check us out on Slack, Clojurian Slack or Clojureverse, or on Zulip, or just at us at Defen Podcast on Twitter. Enjoy your day and see you in the next episode.